Welcome back to a place we haven't been for a very long time on this channel. We are back in Farming Simulator 17 on the west coast. It is early autumn to be precise, and I have one field ready for harvest. Actually, I'm in the progress of harvesting it. If I move to the right vehicle, which I haven't, no, that's a tractor. I found the harvester. It's a Massey Ferguson 7347S. I think I had a class before, but I swapped it for this one, as I have indeed done with most of my vehicles. Now moved over to Massey Ferguson, because real farmers tend to use the same equipment a lot from the same manufacturer, certainly, so I'm giving that a little bit of a whirl today. We'll see how that goes. Powering this thing on, I just did a couple of rows on this. If I turn on, not press that button, because that takes a lot of photographs. This is completely not set up for this field. That's great. So what's the shape are we looking for? We can bring up the proper big map here. We're on field number 12, which is on a hillside, so it might be beneficial if we move the way you're seeing me move here. That might actually be beneficial. That way we're going uphill and downhill rather than parallel, because that could cause problems. I don't think it's the fastest way. This field is actually a right old bastard to plan out, so we'll try and give this a whirl. We might actually try and do another headland down here, so we have two rows of that before we get moving on the other way. Let's just nip this one around and get started on harvesting. There's been a few updates to a couple of the mods. The most important one is for seasons, which has this thing here, the Wopster, which is, if I hold down a button here, we can see some measurements. All of this now has an effect. So obviously we've got the location. Hang on, I can't on mouse here. Hopefully that's being recorded. Actually, I need to check, make sure I haven't cocked everything up, because I think I might have. Oh no, everything is just fine. I had some problems in the past with my recording software. Just recording a black screen of this, but that shouldn't be a thing now. So we're on the field. We got this new bit in Seasons mod. Our current position up here with the mouse, you can probably see, I hope. Otherwise, that's the top line. Second line is our current elevation. The third line is the current crop we're looking at. This would be wheat, logically. Then we have plant no I believe this is fertilization that's being shown here. Yeah, I'm guessing either this is no, hang on, I'm wrong. This is plant moisture. I now know what's going on. Plant moisture is this one, is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, currently at 17%. Below is the leaf, which is the current growth state. We're at 100. It's ready for harvest. And the bottom one is fertilization, I believe. Although this is technically the first season I'm growing this, so it hasn't really adapted to that update yet. But we'll get moving here in the Massey, the harvester, which is now slowed right down because it was a bit quick before. I need to press the right button, which I've done there. I just press it a couple of times more, moving things around so I can see it a bit better. As far as progress on the farm, I don't know what I had the last time I showed this off. But I have now got, how many cows? I've got 55 cows, and we need to tend to them at some point. Oh yes, we do, because they need some food, and they're lovely, and they're cows, and they're wonderful, and who doesn't love cows? I mean, cows are brilliant, aren't they? They, like, make milk that we drink, and we use for cooking. And, like, they've got skin, which we use if we want to have a posh sofa or in a car, because it's really durable. That's the reason why you've got leather interiors in cars, by the way. It's sort of like a made-up thing for the car manufacturers, because it was easier back in the day to use leather. It was just more durable than fabric, which is technically true today. But I quite prefer fabric, really, also with sofas and that. It's just easier to clean up, innit? My parents, they've got a leather sofa. They've got two, actually. Massive cow they've had to use to get that thing. Christ, we don't have that big cows in Denmark. That must be American cows, because those sofas are huge. But they're in leather. And yeah, I just don't get it, what's wrong with fabric. But they taste delicious. I actually have, for the first time, I haven't had that before, but a T-bone steak. Bought one discounted because it's, the best buy date or best sell date is today. So just bought it, because, cheap shit in it. Who don't like it? It was like more than half price. I'll take that with a tin of beans, which I won't. I'll make potatoes, not because I'm Irish, although that's perfectly okay if you are. Irish seems to be lovely people. Who would mind the Irish? I don't get why there's been all of that problems up there, but, maybe I don't need to know about that, because I'm not British. Anyway, we'll go ahead and try and tidy up this bit here so it's easier for the first row. Then we will get right on started. Raise it up now, reverse back. We should have this sorted out for some GPS action. Anyway, I was talking about the cows. Cows are lovely, cows are wonderful. They make milk, and they make, end up as food as well when they've finished serving off their bits about milk. It is quite tough, though. It's like the opposite of humans. where the women cows, or the female cows, probably you don't have women cows. That's quite derogatory. I didn't mean it in that way, just before anybody on the internet or the news gets hold of this video and finds out that I'm a massive misogynist for calling women cows. Again, I've done it there again, but called female cows for women cows. That's not what I mean. No, I just mean cows that are female. You know, like the opposite of a male. Not a bull, but a cow. They're the ones that are valuable, basically, for the farmers, because they produce milk, and they can do lots of stuff out there. Your bulls, they're just, quite pointless for them, which is why I'm guessing you can buy all of that, a lot of the meat you buy is from male cows, because, they're not really worth keeping for any longer than necessary for them, so they sell them off and they butcher them, and they end up tasting delicious, so I'll take it, thank you. It's Dutch, I think, the one I have today. I don't know why that's relevant, I just thought of it, so it is. And sorry about the camera that's moving about. Do I have a button here to freeze that? I don't, so I'll try now and be a bit more careful about my head movement. We're also missing a row over there, but we'll get to that in a bit. We can always sort it out later on. We've come to a stop. Climb, Massey, climb. You built in Denmark. You can do this. Come on. Technically, they built these in Denmark somewhere. I believe it's near Randers. They bought a factory up there. There's still some of those old Tronningborg driving about that I've seen, which is nice. Good to see, industry from your own country and all of that. Lovely stuff. They can do better than this, though. They climb better hills nowadays. So climb, you bastard, climb. Anyway, this is a more sort of relaxed thing for me to record and do, where we just hang out, we chill, and we just talk shit for a while. It sounds like fun, doesn't it? I'd like to point out I'm recording this on Wednesday, so things might have changed, just based on what's happened, in the world of everything that I talk about. Because the world is a bit up in the air these days, so we don't really know what way everything is going to go. And also, apologies if the audio is a bit weird. I seem to have a problem with my microphone, or my microphone cable. I'm hoping it's a cable that's going bad. I've had that happen before, and I'm basically just really hoping that's the thing. I've just ordered a new cable and a couple more cables, because I need to check out some HDMI cables. I think they're a bit dodgy. They're not really rated for the TV resolution I have or something. They're just basically very old. I haven't bought an HDMI cable in... Well, I've only bought one ever. And that was many years ago. And I bought two. And one of them I broke because it put 4K through it. And it wasn't rated for 4K. So that's basically shat itself, which is quite annoying. It was quite a long one. Although I could technically try it on a different... Anyway, that's not really relevant here. So I bought that and I bought a new internet cable because I broke one. And it's just nice having that in it, so hopefully that'll be fixed soon whenever that arrives. It's delivered by the post, so presumably in not in 19, we're in the 2000s here, they're not that quick. I was going to make a joke about how slow they were, but they can't be slow if they delivered it more than a decade ago, can they? No brain, no they can't. We'll swing this one around then and head back down. And we'll then start off with something slightly less controversial than many other things that we can talk about in the world. Which is motorsport, as that's coming back this weekend. Again, recording this yesterday technically, so things may have changed. I just read a little while ago that there's an all-female team in the IMSA Sports Car Challenge series, not the big 24-hour race series that's kicking off this weekend, but in one of the support classes, which is more consumer-focused. I say that they've got GT4s, so it's basically GT3 5 years ago, which coincidentally, as far as I also saw, is the budget nowadays are pretty much up to what they were in 2014 for GT3 cars if you run a GT4 car. So you've done a great job there, SRO. That's certainly not a bubble waiting to burst, which it is, and it's going to burst in a massive way for a lot of race teams soon, and that won't be nice, but the SRO has been entrusted with something they're clearly not capable of running, and I've been saying that for a couple of years now. I think I've gone on record as well on these videos, so you'd be able to find that if you would be interested in. But that's by the by, that'll happen. No point getting upset about that. It happens in racing, happened before, will happen again. We've seen it lately with the WEC, where the LMP1 hybrid thing burst because basically there was no cost management in there, and it just went out of control. Audi pulled out. Then Porsche just won everything in the following year and decided there was absolutely no reason to continue racing because they won what they needed to win. And now it's just Toyota left trying to hold the fort while the ACO and the FIA tries to figure out what the hell to do. And apparently the right thing is to have a 12-hour race at Sebring immediately following the iconic 12 hours of Sebring, which isn't a part of that, which is a stupid idea. And I can tell you how that weekend is going to go for me. I shall watch the real 24 hours of Sebring, the IMSA race, I shall then go to sleep, because it ends about 4 in the morning, and then maybe if I feel like caring about the WEC 24, or not the 12, no, the words, yes, again. There's a lot of very similar terms there, so the 24 hours of Daytona is coming up. Then we've got the 12 hours of Sebring, which is very confusing. And I don't know if you can actually double build, because you might be able to run the same drivers in both races, but I don't know if they've got a rule against that. I mean, I don't think you can. Technically, you can't say you're not allowed to compete in other events at the same weekend, so sure. You might be able to do a 24-hour race if you wanted to, if you were mad enough, but I know that quite a few of the race car drivers are actually mad enough to want to do that, because, you know, it'll be a bit of a laugh, which I fully understand, by the way. It just seems like a stupid idea from the ACO and the slightly less part, the FIA, to do that. Just reeks of desperation, which is understandable given that what they have basically are collapsing. At the very least, they've got some lovely GT cars. The only GT car they need is the Corvette, which they don't have. I don't know if they actually found Larber to run it full time this year. It would be nice if they did, because that thing is nice. I have grown into the Corvette. I was very much an Aston fan, and still am. I mean, I have to root for the Dane train. The little Danish Dynamite car is wonderful and fantastic. But I sort of always preferred the... Well, I preferred the Aston, the DBR9. I went to them on. My God, that thing sounded great. That was a screaming V12, if I remember correctly, when I went there. And it sounded glorious. It looked fantastic as well. I think it was, what was it called? Something with an M Motorsport ran it. And it was gorgeous. It was this sort of titanium graphite grey. It looked stunning with a red accent around the grille of the old DB9. Beautiful race car. Absolutely stunning. And then they did that with the DB... What the hell is it called now? The DB9? Or whatever it's called. No, the Vantage. Sorry, that's the one they're racing. They stopped that because they got the new GT regs instead of the old GT1 regs. Yeah, that's right. I always sort of really like those cars because they look great. But I have to admit I've moved more over to Corvette because it's, you know, a fucking Corvette. These days the Corvette's actually quite decent as a car. Which is a weird world we're living in where the Corvette is actually a decent handling car as well as being just fast and cool and American. Because they've actually found somebody with talent and not just two fat blokes in Texas or whatever they built it. They've actually got decent people building on it, which is great. I actually wouldn't mind having one, which is a bit weird. Anyway, that's not really important here. Of course, the Ford GT is actually ending this year, isn't it? It's not the last year, 2018, where the Ford GT will be racing. Which I'm excited about. Not really a fan of those. Talked about that before. Really, I don't like them. I mean, they're run by Chip Ganassi, already off to a terrible start. Then they turn out to just be a bunch of American cheats in the sport, which is not really welcomed at all. And, yeah, have they actually delivered any cars yet to customers? I know it was on the Grand Tour, this series, where they did a race in New York State. But I don't think anybody has actually taken delivery apart from a select few. So it technically doesn't really account to homologation rules where you have to build something like 500 or 800 cars. That actually has to be built and delivered to customers. So technically they're racing a prototype car in a GT class in more than one way. And yeah, not a fan. Not a fan in the slightest. That is something I'm looking forward to going away for reasons I already explained. And we will set off now with a trailer. We need to empty our combine harvester. We need to lock this into place. We just need to swing it around. Bring it around here. So that's nice, of course. Full GT going away. Hopefully we'll get some, you know, less cunty teams running in the series. I don't even want to think about their budget because it's basically one of the biggest US race teams with one of the biggest car manufacturers. I'm guessing money is no object to them. They've just thrown that at the problem. And they've gotten away with it until the end of this year where they don't want to continue, which is yay for everyone who likes decent racing and non-cunty teams in the sport. But this weekend coming up here is quite interesting because we've got the 24 Hours of Daytona. A race I genuinely haven't really cared about until a couple of years ago when IMSA and Grand Am merged. It was just a weird choice, but it's actually worked out sort of okay for them now. The 24 hours. Again, it's confusing because there's two 12-hour races at Sebring and one 24-hour race at Daytona. How am I meant to have any idea of how that works at all in my brain? Hint, I can't. But we kick off there at Daytona, same track that they run the 500-mile race at for NASCAR. Only this one's got proper corners and that on board. It's not just turn left all the time. And I say proper corners because it's, go left and right, which is not what NASCAR does most of the time. I prefer traditional racing that aren't on ovals, but if people like NASCAR, they should be allowed to watch NASCAR. I'm personally not a fan. I have watched it in the past though, and I can certainly see all the skill and all that, but that's by the by anyway. It's an interesting track, and I think as far as the weather would go, it might get a bit rainy, but it'll be quite lovely as far as I'm concerned. Something like 20 degrees during the day. I mean, you don't have winter in Florida. If you live in Florida, can I just say, fuck you, mate? Because we've had fucking snow this week. It's been minus a couple of degrees during the week, and you've got 20 degrees and you call, oh, I've got winter. Mate, I'd be in t-shirt and shorts if it was 20 degrees. Then again, like the summertime for Florida is like 33 average, I think, which is quite frankly too warm for me. Again, temperature range is a bit different over here. Basically, we never get 30 degrees. Like, that would be ridiculous if we did. Something gone wrong. I mean, I've had like 43 degrees once in France, and that was, well, I was pretty much ready to die at that point, which is awful. Thankfully, the rain came down very hard afterwards, and we nearly drowned everyone in France at that point, but we all survived, I think. Somebody might have died, but don't think it was attributed to the rain. It was something like a 20-minute rain shower, quite a heavy rain shower with lots of thunder. It was very exciting. Scary, but exciting. Exciting like driving a TVR, or what I imagine driving a TVR would be like. It's very exciting, but you're going to die at any moment, because you're driving a TVR, which apparently is back, I read. Very excited. Anyway, back to IMSA. I don't know why I go off topic all of that much. But in the Challenge Series, which supports it with a 4-hour race, fantastic series. Apparently they want to replace one class with the TCRs, which I don't understand. Why would you do that? You've got the ST, which is my probably favourite class in motorsport last year, because it's just what racing should be. There was MX-5s racing against Nissan Altimas and like all other sorts of vehicles out there, BMWs and all sorts of stuff. It was fantastic watching that ST class. It was just fantastic. It was just people going, right, we're going racing and we're going to do it bloody fun. And they did. Porsche Boxsters, the lot. It was wonderful. Who didn't like it? It really is a previously undiscovered beat. Hang on. What's going on with our working width? I'm making a massive mistake of this. Working width, please. Thank you. Must have defaulted here. Let's just try and set this up then. No, you've got it wrong here, chappy. We shall bring you over to where? That seems about right. We'll just have a bit of an overlap and then we'll sort it out later on by reversing up here. Yeah, that's been a shining star, the Challenge Series. Really entertaining, good racing. Had a few unfortunate endings to the 4-hour race, including at Watkins Glen last year. Otherwise a great race. That was shortened a lot by rain and just general malarkey, if I recall correctly. Loads of cars flinging themselves at the scenery and barriers, which is understandable when you are on slicks in the rain. Apparently, in IMSA series, there's no sort of rules that allow people to pit under a safety car for rain tyres if it begins to rain. That's not emergency service as far as that's concerned, which seems like a massive oversight. How is changing into rain tyres in the case of torrential downpour not emergency service? It seems like the epitome of emergency service. You want the cars to actually be drivable on the track. If you're on slick tyres when there's standing water on the track, you're going to have a massive accident. It doesn't matter if you're doing 500 miles an hour or you're doing 5. You don't have any grip on standing water. Just what are you thinking there, guys? Come on. You know better than that, and I know it, because you've half sorted out the regs. Anyway, that doesn't matter. In the Challenge Series, back on point, we've got, as I read just a moment ago, the first all-female team racing again, which is great. Why don't we have more than that? Technically we don't, because I just remembered last year at the Enduros in Australian supercars, and the year before in Bathurst, there was 2 females racing in a, was it a Ford or a Holden? No, hang on. Was it a Ford or a Holden? You got to say it like that. It's Australian. You have to. It's the law. You always have to say it like you are an Australian, because it's just fun. Who doesn't love Australians? Anyway, yeah, that was Simona Di Silvestro, who was a regular last year. Fantastically entertaining to watch, by the way. Especially at the end at Newcastle. God, she can drive. Fuck me. I mean, she was on a level playing field, which it was a new circuit. Nobody had driven there before. She was out there taking names and getting, admittedly, put into the wall by Tim Slade. But that's to be expected when you're racing against Tim Slade. Enough thought about that though. She got him back the next day by effectively shutting the door on his face, which was quite entertaining. And I cheered a lot when that happened, because I hate to see that kind of stuff. If you race somebody, you can't just put them in the wall and think, yep, that's a legal pass. They will get her back, and she did get him back, and yes, that's good. Anyway, yeah, there was somebody else, like Grace or something like that, so it wasn't technically the first all-female team again, but it was certainly the first in like one of the bigger international series, like the IMSA series. I'd consider that to be international. And that's good to see. I mean, it's the only sport in the world, really, and I talk about proper sports that require like physical performance, like darts or snooker. Those are not sports. It just isn't. It's not. You're throwing a thing at a board, or you're just doing a specific type of geometry. Not a sport, lads. It just isn't. If you can do it with a beer belly, it's not a sport, and you can't do motorsport with a beer belly. Unless you're Top Gear, in which case they did in 2000 or whatever when they did the Britcar 12-hour or 24-hour race at Silverstone. But that's another story, you know, that's a different type of motorsport. This is actual proper motorsport. Unless you're Juan Pablo Montoya, or technically Juan Montoya, which we should call him, because the Pablo bit was invented by Bernie Ecclestone when he came to Formula 1, because it was a bit more exotic, because Bernie Ecclestone's an old racist cunt, but we all know that. Anyway, enough about that. Back to that. Good to see female drivers. It's the only spot in the world where we really can do that without having any kind of, you know, issues. Like, a woman can take a corner at 100 miles an hour that a man can take a 100 miles an hour corner with. There's just no difference. I mean, women have balls. We know that. Women have been, like, police officers who's run towards danger, been firemen that run towards danger, been soldiers who's run towards danger. Literally, women sign up in the military and choose to be a combat medic because it's the only role that'll get them at the front line. You can't beat tough cunts like that in any way. I mean, what's the point in arguing with the women? Oh, women can't do motorsport. Yes, they can. They run stuff. Like, fuck it. It's just great to see that because there's no point in reason not to. They are, of course, discriminated against in motorsport because some people think it's a man's world. But just don't get it, really. What's the point? You know, a woman can drive, a man can drive. No problems, women can fly Apache helicopters for crying out loud. That's fucking cool. They can drive race cars too. I'm guessing driving a race car is slightly less stressful than flying in an Apache attack helicopter. In most situations, really. Like, driving a race car is pretty simple. Look at some of the people who are currently doing it with great success. It's not a job that requires lots of mental fortitude and that. You just got to be able to turn the wheel at the right point and press the accelerator and know what happens. It's not really simple. I love motorsport, but it's not that difficult. It's very difficult to master, true, but it's not difficult to do. Most people with a driving license would be able to do it in some capacity. Very few have the skills and the ability to be top-level professionals, because basically you have to have no fear at all. Like, you just have to be stupid and go, yeah, I might die, but, you know, it'll have been a laugh, innit? It's the same sort of thing you need if you're, like, a fireman, because you go, oh, look, there's a building on fire. I should go in it. Just for the hell of it, it'll be fun, probably. Same sort of thing, really. It's not the same as flying a fighter jet or something like that, because, you know, you've got missiles and that to manage. It's just, you know, you go in because you feel like being stupid, which I sort of like. I mean, I like firemen because they're quite good laughs to be around generally. And I'm guessing racing drivers is the same. Anyway, yeah, so that would be that. It'd be lovely to see. Lovely to see that. And then the weekend after, we're going into probably one of my favourite weekends ever in the year. It's the Bathurst 12-hour, which I am very excited about. Again, it's Australians. Whenever they do motorsport, they don't just do it like we do it in Europe. They just go, oh yeah, bros, we got the mountain. Why don't we have a race up and down it? Go around a bit at the bottom just to make it a bit different, so the puffs from Europe will be interested in coming over here and racing. And then Bruce would just go, oh yeah mate, that'll be a brilliant idea. Do we want to get the New Zealanders involved? Oh, you know, don't want to get those cunts involved, do we? But they do eventually, because they got Shane Van Gisbergen. Oh, hello, I'm full. We'll need to sort that out. Which side? Okay, it's on the driver's side. Got to sort that out then. Very excited about Bathurst, though, even though it's gone sort of a bit more GT3-ish over the years. I much prefer it back when it was sort of more like a Plucky Cup race with a few GT cars, whereas now it seems to be much more GT3 focused. Hopefully that'll change in the coming years. I just like that idea of just seeing a couple of GT cars racing around old Holden Commodores. Sorry, Holden Commodores. It's just fantastically entertaining to watch. Just brilliant. And Outford Falcons. There was a brilliant piece of commentary, I think it might have been from Bathurst, the 1000 race, the supercar race, from a couple of years ago when there was a massive accident, and this underlines why I love Australians so much. There was a bloke that was spun around, crashed pretty hard, his car caught fire, and the commentators, and I'm not joking, literally went, "Oh, that's a huge accident, he's on fire as well." You just don't get commentary like that anywhere else in the world. It is usually, oh no, they've had a massive accident, oh no, he's on fire, he needs to get out quickly. The Australians just respond with, "Oh yeah, he's on fire as well, mate, this is good entertainment." Or technically they would probably go, "Oh yeah, ripper, mate," because that's what they do. You just can't not love Australians, because they're brilliant and wonderful. It really is the brilliant part of motorsport, is that kind of stupid approach to things. I've also heard that the Americans have had lots of heavy weather, like they even had snow in Florida. Although, you know, just a bit cold really, innit? And then they got a bit of snow. Probably disappeared within like an hour or so. But, you know, if they call that snow, that's lovely and adorable. They'll go back to having 40-degree weather in no time at all. But the rest of the East Coast has had pretty severe winter, I'll have to admit, from what I've heard. So I hope everything's okay and they've, like, you know, scraped all the snow off the road so people can go about. They had like minus 40 something degrees, I've heard. I can technically just say minus 40 because that's the same in Celsius as it is in Fahrenheit. A wonderful degree. Don't know why we didn't do that with 0 with the Fahrenheit. Because, you know, 0 should be freezing. Celsius just makes sense, people. Why don't you catch up with it? But, you know, Russia really just deciding, oh yeah, America, you've done well. Hold my beer, mate, and decided to have minus 60, I read the other day in Yakutsk. Fuck me, minus 60 degrees? You must be having a laugh. That's just not fun. That's really cold. Really, really cold. Like, my testicles would have fallen off in that temperature. And even if I didn't have testicles, they would still have fallen off, because, you know, that's how cold it was. You'd have grown a pair just so they can fall off. Which I'm guessing is what every Russian woman does. Just because they can, because they're Russians and they're women, and women can do everything. That's why we men have been trying to keep them down for all those years. We know how good they are. We knew that if we let them have any chance at ruling, they'd just immediately destroy us and everything we stood for, which is very true. But, you know, we can't let that hold them back. You know, if they're better, and they are, they're women. We just have to deal with it. Don't let the old cunt men hold them down. Anyway, enough about that. We're talking about the weather, we're talking about all of that. There's lots of stuff going on in it. Oh my god. My voice has decided to have a moment, which is always great. We shall just quickly bring this around and drop off all of our wheat in the Herbst trailer, which seems a bit sort of off size to this thing, but I did actually see a tractor roughly of this size with a trailer like this behind it. Pretty much this exact trailer, which just looked a bit weird, but apparently they do it in real life, so why wouldn't we do it here? And there's also been a new expansion announced for this game, which I completely forgot to mention. Europa is coming in here. We've seen the addition of Holmer with the release of this game, but now Europa is coming in with the Euro Tiger, the big beet harvester, and the Euro Mouse as well, I think, and a pulled potato harvester. I'm trying to remember this off the top of my head and I'm not sure I got it right, but I think that's what we're getting. And that's great. I'm not necessarily sure I'm the one who's like going to buy it, because I don't know. I've got a beet harvester, but it's the small one, the Glimmerrooster, which is just the right size. I don't even know where it is. Is it in here? Where is it? Where have I left it? I don't know. Oh, hang on, I don't know. I've got the potato harvester. That's the one I've got. I need to do beet stuff for next year because I want to try and get into pigs. which, by being Danish, I really should have done first of all, because there's like more pigs in this country than there are humans. But, you know, we'll leave that for another day. We'll leave you here as well, running in, grab the combine, and take it for a whirl again. Off we go. And we need to get started. Hang on, we need to start from the top side, don't we? Oh, yes, we do. Oh, yeah, and as you probably noticed, I need to harvest this today. Then I need to press the bales and stow them somewhere before the rain comes at some point in either tomorrow or at night, which is always exciting. I've had to do that rush once before, as the straw will begin to rot, and it rots by simply going away after a while. So if this got rain now, it would just disappear eventually, even if we pressed it as a result of Seasons mod, which is nice. It just means you've got to try and plan and be ready for all eventualities, which, when you're playing in somewhere near Wales, isn't really at all possible because it rains like every day in Wales. Don't know how they bother living there. It's just old mountains and rain, as far as I'm aware. And the SAS uses part of its countryside to do their training in. But that's not really enough to keep it going. They're mostly, you know, girls fighting. Given what we've heard about certain things, and certainly what I've read in a couple of different books, not really the most professional. Basically, the SAS is very high profile, so they attract a lot of less desirable entries who sometimes makes their way through the little eye and actually gets accepted in, as we saw with the Bravo 2 Zero mission, which was a colossal fuck-up from the start and should never really have been undertaken in the manner that it was. I mean, why would you walk through the desert looking for scuds? It seems like a stupid idea. You have no mobility, you have no way of defending. It's just a stupid idea. There's a reason why in World War II they decided to have the long-range desert group, and why in every desert conflict ever since they've used highly mobile units. I mean, the SS is famous for being descendants from the LRDG. It's very weird keeping that in mind, the old David Sterling thing. So why would an SAS unit decide, oh yeah, let's walk through the desert? That won't end badly for anyone. If we make contact, we'll just dig our way to China and get away that way. No. Yeah, and it ended about as, unfortunately, as bad as it could have done. I mean, with, I believe, one died, maybe more. And there's been so many conflicting stories coming up from the people. One got away, I believe, and the rest was taken captive. And there's been many conflicting accounts of what happened. And it's not the first time, or it wasn't the last time, certainly, that the SAS cocked up. It wasn't the first time either. They also tried a mission during the Falklands War when they were trying to liberate... Well, what was that other one? Because they went to the Falklands, and then there was that island away a bit. But I've completely forgotten the name of it, and I don't have any way I can look it up here. Actually, I do. Oh, yes, it was the Georgian island, or technically around that area, which is near the Falklands. Anyway, the SAS decided that the best way to operate there was to deploy a team using a helicopter onto a glacier in the mountains during a heavy snowstorm. Thankfully, nobody died on that mission, but it was bloody close. I don't think anybody died. It's been a while since I read about it, so I might get my military missions mixed up with one another. But it did end quite terrible. They were deployed correctly. They got to an impassable, I guess, a little ice shear that was sheared off in the glacier, which was like just a massive drop into the... I don't know what's inside a glacier. Ice? Like a little ice valley thing, very sharp out here, which they couldn't pass. They couldn't climb over it, so they just had to hunker down in a snowstorm in gale force winds in the winter. Not a smart idea. Had to be rescued out. One helicopter crashed, it trying to get them out. Thankfully nobody died, but they lost a valuable asset, a helicopter. It's not like they had a lot of assets in that war. And they had to airlift everybody out on one helicopter, which was quite daring and quite stupid. And a terrible idea for a mission, really, but that's just the way it goes sometimes. They also ditched was it a Sea King or was it one of the Wessex? Anyway, it doesn't matter. For another mission, they were sent over to the mainland in Argentina to try and take out one of their air bases. that were sending out aircraft to attack the task force. And they landed in Argentina. The mission was to then move off to essentially destroy the helicopter when they landed because they didn't have enough fuel to get back. So they had to destroy it, go to the airbase, blow up the planes, and then leave and go to Chile. What happened was the SAS landed, they blew up the helicopter, and everyone just walked to Chile. They didn't bother with the mission, which seems like a terrible mission when you are, a Special Forces soldier, to sort of not do the mission you were sent over to do. But, mistakes are made. That one probably a bit worse than it should be. I don't remember if anybody was actually, punished for it. They also had a cock-up during the Second Gulf War, I think it was, where basically an SAS unit just stopped or was... I don't remember the details out here. It was sort of like a mix. It was either an SBS member that was lent to the SAS or an SAS member lent to the SBS. And they just sat in their vehicles on the side of a berm, just going, nope, we can't cross it, because the commander, being the exchange person, wasn't really prepared to take on the mission. He didn't believe it was the right choice. So that's the SAS covered then. We know they're a bit off sometimes, but I'm sure they've done lots of good things. The SBS seemed to be the one that does the more covert jobs that nobody wants to talk about. And quite interestingly, again, these are, first-hand encounters, no way to verify much of what it is, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. Certainly the SBS operate a bit more in the shadows. They're a bit more interested in being the covert unit. And sometimes the SAS gets to take credit for what they do. Because, you don't always want to be known for who you are. Which is a bit weird, perhaps, but it makes sense. If you don't know about a unit, how can you be afraid of it? I'm guessing that's why you've got the SEALs, who get all the publicity in America, and then I'm sure you've got something else that's not the SEALs, that just does a lot of butt kicking, just doesn't talk about it. Which seems like the way it should be done if you're a Special Forces, but that's just not how it is, especially with the SAS. Christ. I did that Iranian embassy mission, which was, for rescuing people from a building. It just got them a lot of publicity during that thing. Hang on, how are we looking with the audio? Okay, no, we're just back to where we were. I just saw something that I thought looked a bit odd, but no, we're back to where we want to be, and that's great, innit? Oh, yes it is. Where was I? Yeah, the SBS, they seem to be quite nice. They apparently also do some drug operations nowadays, or certainly have done at sea. Have attacked, or not really attacked, but I suppose boarded ships is the correct term, using helicopters, which is the best way of doing it, by the way. If you're going to do an mission on a boat or a ship, please use a helicopter, because it's just cool. Like, apparently there was a mission in... which one was it? I think it was the Call of Duty 4, where they sent out a helicopter that... They've actually done something like that, the SBS, onto boats, which is so cool. They just dropping down from a helicopter onto a ship. That's just the most die-hard thing in the world. So cool. And they don't really talk about it either, which is sort of, nice. By the way, how are people finding this year's Grand Tour series? I need to say I haven't actually seen the latest episode. I haven't gotten around to it. It's been a bit hit and miss. A bit more hit this time around than it was the first time, but that's to be expected. Although it really feels like they don't know when to stop. Like, they take a joke and they just run with it, and they forget to stop at some point. Like we saw with the Farm Gumnaka bit, which was just a bit too long, I found. Like, had it been about 25% the length it would have been good. It just dragged out for a bit too long. And then there was the unscripted, but very, very scripted trip, which was mostly pointless as far as I'm concerned. I didn't really enjoy that one. I don't get what the point is by going out and telling people, oh yeah, you don't like us, or you want us to do unscripted bits, so we'll respond to you by doing a very scripted bit. I just thought that was a bit weird and didn't really work. But I don't know if they've lost writers. I'm guessing that's what happened between Top Gear and the Grand Tour. They've got a new writing team on board, or a different producing team who's been doing some of that anyway. It certainly just feels like they're sort of getting closer anyway to what we had before. We started off with 2 quite strong episodes. Then it went a bit downhill with the episode... What was the one? That was the Don't remember if that was the first one that went a bit wrong with the Albanian or whatever it was. No, Croatian, sorry, it was a Croatian road trip, which was just not very good. But they've had a really good moment as well, like the race from New York to New York. So that little waterfall they've got up there at the border. That was quite a good episode, that felt like what Top Gear was at its prime. It was just them having fun and doing stupid things with cars. But of course Hammond's being joked about a lot, which I think is fantastic. It's so nice to see them actually giving him a hard time because he crashed again and again. Because he broke the, was it a McLaren MP something they've calling their cars. Broke that one too. I think he put, was it water he put in instead of petrol? Which is a bit of an oversight. How can you do that big of a mistake? That's just, I don't know. I don't know why they let him drive anymore, that he should just be a passenger. It's sort of like, you know, Jimmy Carr and his tax evasion jokes, which is entirely correct. But the Hammond situation is sort of similar to Jimmy Carr, who's, if you don't know, was caught avoiding or evading, avoiding is a legal one, which is what he did, tax. So avoiding tax in the UK, don't know if it's different in elsewhere in the world, but you can avoid tax, you can't evade. Because avoiding tax is circumventing the sort of, you know, system in place, or the, basically it's doing number gymnastics so that you don't have to pay as much in tax, whereas evading tax is not paying the tax you should technically be paying. You could say the two things are pretty much the same. One is legally criminal, the other one's just morally bankrupt. So entirely okay to keep making fun of both Hammond for crashing, because he does that a lot. Especially when you just, you know, go through a corner too quickly, which somebody with his experience driving fast cars should probably know a thing or two about. I mean, how many cars has he crashed now? He rolled the van back in the Van Man challenge they did. I think that was the first on-camera crash he had. Then he, of course, crashed the Jet Dragster. And has he crashed anything else other than he crashed a Ferrari or a Corvette or something like that when they did one of the great road trips. Then he's crashed, of course, the thing, the remake or whatever it was called. Quite spectacularly crashed it too. It caught fire multiple times for several days, which is a good way of crashing. And then he destroyed a engine for a McLaren by putting water in it. So, you know, crashing a bit. Oh, he ended Jet Dragster. I don't know if I'll remember to mention that, but he definitely crashed a Jet Dragster. That was quite spectacular too. Very fast. Was that the fastest accident on land in UK history? I don't know. That's probably a record he has now. Unless somebody's done a super fast rocket run again and crashed it. Did the SSC, what was it called, the new one? Did that ever do a run, by the way? I don't remember hearing about it doing an actual run. What's it called? Was it the SSC Ultimate, or was it the SSC Bloodhound? No, the Bloodhound was the old one, wasn't it? Like way back when. That was on Extreme Machines and Discovery Channel, if I remember correctly. But they were bound to do a new one with a new car. Don't remember ever hearing if it did. Maybe it crashed and they caught fire again. That wouldn't have been pleasant at all. That would have been quite terrible, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would. Definitely would have been terrible to catch fire. And it's also good news if you're an American government employee, because apparently you didn't have to work over the weekend because the government decided to shut down because they couldn't agree on money. So that changed on Monday, so you can now go back to work, which I'm sure is great. You'll now get paid again. I mean, everybody likes getting money, right? So that's a good thing. For like 3 weeks, I think they're back, and then in 3 weeks' time they'll probably be back on it because, you know, the Republicans and Democrats can't agree about anything at the moment. One side likes having, you know, a competent president. The other side is perfectly fine with having a sex-pesting moron for president, which I think is the closest thing to describing him. I mean, there's so many other words that you could use that I'm not going to use because, you know, it's not a good situation. It's a very complicated situation, very, you know, difficult to understand. And from an outsider, you're just going, you what? You think he's doing What are you doing? What, America, do you need help? Do we need to set up some sort of hotline? Do we need to send you to Nations Anonymous to get some help? Like, yo dogs, what's going on over there? You're a bit, weird. Then again, we just had the Charles Puigdemont, which I think is the correct way of pronouncing his name. The bloke who's trying to get Catalonia independent from Spain. He was in Denmark the other day, on Monday I think it was. So that was interesting. Apparently the Spanish government or something wanted him arrested, but the Spanish High Court didn't want to do that. Which is nice of them, I think that was very good of the Spanish High Court, because I really didn't want our country ending up trying to play a very pivotal role in that. It's just, I don't really see how we could have done anything, because I don't know how we are supposed to treat that kind of extradition request, arrest request, because, what he was wanted for, as far as I understand, was inciting revolt with the vote for independence, which exceeded last year. That's basically what they want him for. And how can you go out and sort of go, yeah, bro, what you want us to do, that's your problem, not our problem, Just very good that we didn't end up having to do anything there. I mean, I'm loving his hair, by the way. What a wonderful haircut he's got. Just so much of it. And it's quite long. It's just spectacular. Like, that hair alone could govern Catalonia, whatever they want to call themselves, quite competently, I would suggest. He certainly won't need a comb over. You see, that's the difference between certain world leaders and others. Some need comb overs, others don't. And some are capable of doing a vote, which is very weird. I mean, I don't know what to think about the Catalonian situation. It's so weird. Like, I don't know what's up and what's down, because, Catalonia, they want out. They're like an economic powerhouse. They're sort of like what Germany is to Europe, to Spain. And that's, just a weird situation. I mean, if they want independence, go do it, as far as I'm concerned. Yay. And, we should try and form bonds with them if they want to, because, it's good to have trade going with other countries in Europe. That's great. But, as long as it's democratic and everybody's okay with it. It was a bit weird during the whole voting thing, because apparently there was a bit of police punching people in the face, which is never good when they're trying to exercise their democratic right, which certainly hasn't helped the Spanish government, as far as I'm aware. It doesn't really help them to paint them in a good light when they're punching people who want to go and vote. That is not good. I believe in a couple of places the police actually was like, yo, bro, we ain't touching this shit. They're doing democracy. And like the Catalonian police head boss person has apparently been arrested and sent to Barcelona. Hang on, no, I'm always confused because Barcelona is in Catalonia, so that's their capital. But the capital of Spain is Madrid. And I can't ever work that out. It's just weird. Because whenever I think of Spain, I think of Barcelona, because they've got the Circuit de Catalunya near it, which will be interesting for Formula 1. What's going to happen with that next year, or this year? Spring, early summer, whenever that race happens, because it could end up in a very difficult situation. It might not happen if it gets a bit, revolty and, leaves, because then it won't be the Spanish Formula 1 Grand Prix, then it'll be the Catalonian Formula 1 Grand Prix, and what will happen? It's very confusing. But, many things are confusing. The US politics just seems very weird. Like, was it in December that bloke in Alabama, the sex creep, he lost out to somebody who wasn't a sex creep, I think, which is good. Apparently Donald Trump, basically, somebody's a massive cunt if Donald Trump likes them. That's just a great way of knowing if people are a cunt. If either Donald Trump, Piers Morgan, or Rupert Murdoch goes, yeah, this is a top bloke, you just know to run away, because they're just a massive cunt. And with Trump, you just know he's a sex pest as well if he likes him, because he's a sex pest, and sex pests like being around other sex pests. So that's a great way of figuring out if people are cunts or not. It's quite weird, though, just at first glance, to think, why would Russia? Because generally it is accepted that Russia had a finger involved in the election. The last figure I saw was something like 50,000 social media accounts that was involved from the Russians in affecting the election. Posting, the so-called fake news, which is a terrible term. I mean, who haven't just coined that term to their own and just shouted it, and whenever somebody said something they don't like. Like, whenever I'm around my family, if, we go in and make jokes about certain things, or we bring up stuff that we don't want to know, we just declare it as fake news and everybody has a laugh because, it's a stupid thing. And it's a totally legitimate thing, if you ask Donald Trump. And it's weird to think that why would Russia want him, because they've got absolutely no leeway with him. Like, they don't now have a great relationship with America. They're going head-to-head in certain things, which is a bit weird. But then again, historically, Russia has never really been too interested in appointing people into countries or affecting other countries, which they have a long history of, including all the way back during the Soviet Union. Generally, they don't want a country to be allied to them, they just want a country to be destabilised. And Donald Trump is very unpredictable and just very confusing. He's not a person that's going to, incite a lot of confidence. And, you don't know where he stands. Was it last week where they talked about the financial deal and where one of his advisors went out and said, yeah, we've talked about it and, we're going to back down, we're not necessarily going to build a wall. Shortly followed a couple of hours later by Donald Trump going, oh yeah, we're definitely building a wall. So when even his own staff don't know what he's doing, how the fucking hell are the rest of the world going to know? But that's what Russia wants. They don't want somebody as an ally. They just want that country weakened and destabilised so they then can take a more prominent position in that region. They've done it before. The Russians, they did it in Oman way back when. Like, that was during the Vietnam War, where they supported a rebellion against the Sultan of Oman back in the day, which was quite despotic, quite a terrible old fella, which was actually quite bizarrely dethroned by the British, because back then it was a British, not necessarily colony, but certainly a British dependency, and they just popped down, coincidentally with the SAS, and went, yeah mate, you might want to step back and let your son take over, because he was a bit more, progressive. Is that the right term? I don't know. He was certainly a bit more open to, change, and he changed, and it's now why Oman is a sort of nice-ish place from what I've heard. Like, that whole thing back then, which was a war that wasn't really talked about because the British didn't really want it talked about, because it was a bit hush-hush, and it was, the SAS was down there and fighting and working with the Omani troops. They didn't want it to be a big high-profile thing. But they were certainly, the rebels, they were certainly supported by the Russians and the Chinese, much like Vietnam was. Certainly several of the prisoners that was taken of the rebels did go to training in like Kiev and other places in the Soviet Union, which is a bit weird to think of. Coincidentally, their downfall in that rebellion was to disallow any kind of religion, because they were heavily religious down there. I believe they were Muslim, and they were not allowed to practice, and that wasn't very good for them. So they failed in that regard, and we know about Vietnam, which was heavily supported by the Chinese, the communist Chinese, and the Russians as well at the time. And in many other countries, like if you look at Yugoslavia and that area, there's a lot of links to that. More recently in the Ukraine, where they have tried to destabilise the country and trying to very difficult situation, sort of like a political minefield here, but from the outsiders it certainly appears that they have been trying to affect the country's stability so they could gain territory through it. Most recently with the Donetsk action, where they're trying now to set up their own little republic, trying to be part of them, to try and keep the Ukrainians from going to Europe, because apparently the Ukrainians is sort of very torn. One part of the country is very much aligned with Europe and they want to be part of Europe, and the other part wants to be more associated with Russia, which is a very difficult situation to be in, and Russia has played a very clever game with the Ukrainians. Did they not also poison or do some sort of attack on either the current or former President Litvinenko? Was he not subject to some sort of attack from the Russians? Also, wasn't there some sort of thing from, Crimea? One of the prosecutors was also attacked. The Russia has also a long history of attacking people it doesn't like, certainly silencing people within Russia itself. We've seen that over the years with people who disappear. It's been well known about the Gulag and all of that. But also in recently, post Iron Curtain, we've seen it with, what was that bloke called that was killed in London? what was he called? I thought about him the other day, and I've had his name in my mind. I don't remember, but there was a ex-FSB or KGB spy that was killed in London. Was poisoned with, was it polonium-226? Or something like that. I've completely forgotten his name. That's really annoying, because I thought about it the other day. And it's just completely gone from my mind right now. I had him. Maybe it'll come back a bit later on. But yeah, that was a thing that happened. They poisoned him in London, which was really a brave move from them, but they succeeded. Those two people down there, many other people in the past. And it's just a very confusing situation for the world to be in right now, because we've been lucky for a fair few years now. There hasn't been any major conflict in Europe since World War II ended in 1945. Yes, there was the Cold War, where there was, escalations during it, depending on what people were doing. They were posturing between all of the sides, and Russia was testing constantly, pretty much. I had one of my old teachers actually served in the Danish Navy at the time and intercepted every day Russian vessels that were coming in close to Danish waters. They just paralleled each other, took photographs, much like what happens in the sky occasionally, which they still do from time to time with pretty much every country in NATO. Oh boy, let's get this yawn out of the way. So yeah, we've been lucky in that regard. There hasn't been any major conflict or war. Yes, we've had the Vietnam, we've had the Omani War I talked about, we've had a couple of wars in the Middle East, other countries just taken part of, Afghanistan. I mean, we're currently underway in Mali. We've had the Balkan conflicts down there with Serbia and Croatia and Kosovo and all of that. But we haven't had any of the bigger countries clash like we had in World War II, which was the last big one. I mean, since when did any of the major countries in Europe have a war with each other? That hasn't happened. France and Germany hasn't gone at it since then. Britain and France hasn't gone at it, and nobody's gone at Russia. There hasn't been any major conflict, and we've been very lucky in that regard, because historically there's been a lot of war, and it's very unusual that we have a long peace that we've had. So unfortunately it's inevitable that it'll happen again, and I'm guessing the Americans are a bit more fortunate in that regard, that they are sort of kept away to the side, unless they talk about North Korea, in which case your president just decides to threaten nuking them, which is surely going to bring some stability to all of things, isn't it? The threat of nuclear war is known to bring peace and love and understanding to people. Certainly it is. No, it isn't, by the way. It's very difficult, though, to know whether or not that had any effect, because it might have. I mean, we could all be wrong. And it could have been a absolutely brilliant move from the old Trumpy-Dumpy boy to threaten nuclear war, because, they're now going together to the Winter Olympics, which is known for being completely pointless and nobody cares about it at all because it's the Winter Olympics. I don't know, I'm Danish. What the fuck do? We do curling and that's about it. It is not exciting at all. Like, it's an old women's sport to watch. Then again, I'll currently watch handball, which isn't exactly, oh yeah bro. It's not football. It's like, basically handball if you took football and you made it exciting. It's played indoors, so it doesn't have to rain or snow. All of that is completely unaffected. It's 60 minutes instead of 90 minutes. Much smaller play area. Brilliant thought. And you throw the ball, which means you can run. You don't have to, kick the ball with your feet. So you've got more mobility, and you jump, and it's very quick, and it's very exciting to watch. So, yeah, sports and that. And I like cycling too, which basically just men in lycra on a bicycle for 6 hours a day. So, take all of my opinions about that with a grain of salt, because, we all got our own tastes and that. But the Winter Olympics is completely pointless as far as I'm concerned. I just don't understand it. Those people who do that sort of walkie skier thing, I just don't get it. I mean, why would you walk on skis and then pull out a gun and shoot at a target? I just don't get it. And long jumping, that's just basically flinging yourself off a mountain without a parachute. That's a stupid idea. Then you've got ice hockey, which is basically just violence legitimised for however long they play it. I just don't get any of those. Oh my god. Holy mother of a bicycle. Very, very, very yawny, although I've been talking for nearly an hour now, pretty much non-stop, which is very difficult to do. So I think I'll actually try and wrap it up here in a moment's time, or just not have any issues with anything. Anyway, yeah, let's just wrap it up now, shall we? I'm winging it. I'm bloody well winging it. Oh, we need to do another down here. So yes, this has been Farming Simulator. Mostly about everything other than Farming Simulator, but it certainly has been something. I hope you've enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. I hope the audio's been anyway good. If it's been completely awful, you wouldn't even see this, so I don't know why I'm mentioning it. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you'll have a lovely week. We'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye for now.